Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a special Overreaction Monday. Overreaction Tuesday show here on Orange Bloods Live. No Overreaction Monday show on actually Monday. Has some technical issues. So we're back on Tuesday to talk about the exact same thing that we were going to talk about on Monday, which is Chris Delconte and a Texas athletic department that is at the apex of its existence. Before we get into that, though, like, comment, subscribe to the page, jump into the comments section, not the Specs chat, call it the Specs comments section, if you will. Leave all your comments, leave your thoughts. Maybe we'll get back to them. I'm not sure, but we do appreciate them. And oh, by the way, this is sponsored by maybe the greatest sponsor of them all, RogueShop.com, a daily life changer. If you have it, use that promo code OrangeBloods. Go to RogueShop.com, go shopping, find the product that you need for pain, sleeplessness, anxiety. Whatever the case may be, they will help you with their products. They're standing by to answer any questions that you have. Great customer service, great product. They are Texas's home for legal CBD, THC, and so much more. So I thought about this on Sunday. I wrote about it in my 10 Thoughts from the Weekend over at orangebloods.com. But in the aftermath of Texas winning a national championship in softball, and Texas seemingly on the verge of its fourth Directors' Cup out of 5 years, which Texas had never done before. They'd never finished second in its history. They did that 3 times between 2001 and 2005. Technically, it was like 2001 and 2002, that academic year, all the way through 2004, 2005, which included a baseball national championship, a football national championship. At the time, those were the best of times. And yet, as we sit here in 2025, it has occurred to me, guys, stop and smell the roses. Guys, hug your kids. Guys, maybe find somebody today. Tell them when they say, how's your day going? Say, it's going amazing. I'm a Texas Longhorn fan. That's how it's going. And if they're paying attention, they should go, oh, life is good for you right now. These are the best of times. Right now, you're living in them. I don't know how much better they get. They might get a lot better. I suspect that there are more championships to be won. We haven't even entered the Arch Manning era yet on the football side of things. And yet, let's take stock of what's gone on in the football department in the last school year, right? So 2024, 2025, you had a football program that is the only college football program in the country that's been in the national semifinals 2 years in a row, likely a preseason number one. Football seems to be in good hands. Texas basketball team just went 35-4, went to the Final Four for the first time in 22 years. I would say Vic Schaefer's got that thing going in a good direction. Texas baseball under Jim Schlossnagle spent parts of the year ranked number one, won an SEC championship. A little bit of an unsatisfying conclusion to the end of the season. Nobody can run from that, but kind of a weird postseason in general for college baseball. But Texas baseball in a good spot. Volleyball has won 2 of the last 3 national championships. Texas men's swimming won another NCAA championship this year. It's 16th. They lose one coach. They bring in Bob Bowman. They win another. Texas women's swimming won the SEC championship in year 1, 13 consecutive titles. If you think I'm done, I'm not. There's more. Men's tennis, national runner-up just a year ago, national semifinalist this year, national championship in 2019. They've been good. Hey, Texas women's tennis only finished 13th this year, but they won a national championship 3 years ago. Texas track, they won a national championship in 2022. Women's track won a national championship in 2023. Men's golf lost in the NCAA quarterfinals a year ago, but they won a national championship 3 years ago, and they finished number 1 or number 2 in the country in 3 of the last 7 seasons. And oh, by the way, yes, there's Texas rowing, which finished 3rd this year. How dare they? They've only finished 3rd, or they finished no lower than 3rd in 6 of the last 7 seasons. Didn't win a natty this year, but they've won 3 in the last 7. And now you add softball, another national championship. It doesn't stop. The Longhorns are a 90% favorite at this point to end up winning the Directors Cup. It's between Texas and USC. Sorry, Stanford, you don't get to play this year. It's between Texas and USC. And if Texas just comes in 9th or 10th in the upcoming NCAA track and field championships, there's nothing that USC can do. If they just finish where they're kind of projected to finish, 11th to 13th, it would require USC to sweep. Actually, even if USC sweeps the national championships in both men's and women's track and field, as long as Texas finishes as it's supposed to, they're likely to win the Directors Cup for the 4th time in 5 years. Should they underperform, that's what it would take. It would still take USC winning both the men's and women's national championships in order for Texas to blow this Directors Cup. So it's by the end of the weekend, Chris Delconte should have another trophy. He should feel really good. And man, Delconte deserves a ton of credit. The whole episode of the Overreaction Monday show is to get this out of my system. I think Chris Delconte, right now, for a guy who, they hired him to stabilize the athletic department, but more than anything else, they hired him to be a fundraiser. When Chris Delconte was brought to Texas, there were so many projects that were underway, so many things that needed money. And Chris Delconte's skill set, more than anything else, more than being the front man of the program and the guy that shakes hands and kisses babies and does all that stuff, he was brought in to raise money. And he's done it with flying colors. In fact, he's been able to raise so much money that if you forgot about the success of the football program and the other programs across the entire scope of Texas athletics, the fundraising alone is enough to, when you look at what he's done on the job, to say, yeah, man, Texas should be happy. They got the guy that they wanted. They got the very thing that they wanted out of him. And look, I haven't always been Delconte's biggest fan. I thought he was miserable in the eyes of Texas' situation in 2020. It wasn't easy. I thought it was a complete failure on his part to protect his athletes. I thought he left Tom Herman hanging out to dry. And I think that is the black eye of the Chris Delconte experience so far. And that just feels like such a mere footnote. It wasn't a good thing. It's like the only real quibble. Well, that and the men's basketball program, which you can't completely throw on Chris Delconte, who was to know when he thought he fixed that problem with the hire of Chris Beard, that Chris Beard couldn't be a decent human being. At least enough to not get fired. We don't need to relitigate what happened there, but keep your hands to yourself. Everything else, stunningly good. Consider the first 5 hires that Chris Delconte has made since he's been at Texas. In 2018, he made 2. He made Edric Floreal. It was his first hire. And it didn't come with a lot of fanfare at the time. And there will be people that look at what Texas has done in track this year in a very much a what have you done for me lately kind of world. Again, the women's track team won the national championship outdoors in 2023. The men's won the indoors in 2022. He's won national championships since he's been in Austin, both on the men's and women's side, one indoor, one outdoor. Hard to knock that. It's like, oh, you're going to hire a guy in his first 6 years. He's only going to win national championships on both the men's and the women's side. You'd have to say he got that right. The first big hire that Delconte made was Mike White, though, really, in softball. He takes Mike White away from Oregon to replace Connie Clark, who was the only softball coach the Texas program had ever known. And Mike White has completely elevated what's possible in softball. Now they're national champions. Bruce Burke, hired in 2019, All he's done, national championship in 2019, national runner-up a year ago, national semifinalist in 2025. Again, if you're grading hires, pretty hard to not say pretty excellent. In 2020, 2 hires come in to complete the first 5. Vic Schaefer, women's basketball, kind of goes without saying, right? Steve Sarkisian, football. His first 5 hires, 2 natties, natty, Final Four, and 2 consecutive Final Fours on the football side of things. Like, that is cooking. And if you ignore the men's basketball thing for a second, because those are the black marks, if you look at Stein Metzger, the beach volleyball coach, comes over, national championships on his resume, has that program competing already at a high level. Bob Bowman, already year number 1, national championship. Schlossnagle, we mentioned that in baseball. Even Laura Ianello in women's golf comes with a massive reputation, and we're waiting to see the impact of that in a real way. And now we go to men's basketball, and although Chris Beard was the Chris Beard thing, and you go to Rodney Terry and mitigating circumstances on some level, I can't even be completely mad at Chris Delconte. I didn't think he handled that situation. I think the details get lost. I think that could have been avoided. But 2 years go by, no harm, no foul, just a couple of years. Now Sean Miller is in place, and I think the program's in a better position, obviously, than it has been probably since the end of the Rodney Terry finishing Chris Beard's team season and the Elite Eight and all of that. The bottom line is, at this point, Chris Delconte's made 12 hires. The first 5 are smash successes. The next 2 are basketball hires. The next 4 were not men's basketball hires. All appear to be pretty sensational. And then there's Sean Miller. It's crazy how good the Athletics are right now. I wrote in the 10 Thoughts from the Weekend column over at orangebloods.com that Chris Delconte is basically the Daniel Day-Lewis of college athletic directors. Not every single movie he's made won him an Oscar. Not every single movie he made has, a lasting impact on the culture in a way that, like, oh, that's a Daniel Day-Lewis product. Not every single thing he touched turns to gold, but pretty much everything. Pretty much. 9 out of 12 smash successes. The 3 all are inside of one sport. And you think with the hire of Sean Miller that they've got that there. And you look at men's basketball and you wonder, is it going to be the black sheep of Texas athletics? Is that the biggest single ship that's going to be the most difficult to turn around? Because everywhere else, next year, it feels like every program goes into the season with the idea of a national championship firmly in hand. And to me, Delconte deserves a ton of success. To me, and this is, to me, is a hell of a thing to say about a guy who hasn't yet won a national championship. His football program hasn't done that yet. DeLoss Dodds accomplished that in 2005. This is a coach. This is an athletic director that hasn't yet won a national championship in baseball, which we know outside of football, kind of the holy grail for Texas athletics. But that program ranked number 1 in the country this year. You think in Schlossnagle, they've got that thing headed in the right direction. Admittedly, this is a hell of a thing to say, given what DeLoss Dodds accomplished. A lot of people might say that DeLoss Dodds walked so that Chris Delconte could run. I think Delconte is the best athletic director in the history of the program. History of Texas athletics, Chris Delconte, since arriving, I think it was December 9th, 2017. So it hasn't quite been 8 years. Think about what he's replacing. Before him came Mike Parent, who was a fill-in for the disaster that was the Steve Patterson era, which was a wrap-up to kind of the disaster of the DeLoss Dodds era. You wouldn't say for a decade that the Longhorns were floating in the abyss, directionless. That's unfair. But there was a stretch there, and certainly in football, and certainly during the Steve Patterson years, and I would argue that even at the end of the DeLoss era where you had Mac and everything that was going on there, there was a while there where Texas athletics just didn't have it going. They weren't winning in baseball the way you'd want to under Augie. The football program was just in shambles. The basketball program couldn't get to the second weekend of the season for more than a decade. Women's basketball was just nothing, really. It feels like everything has changed. And while we can quibble a little bit on the Steve Sarkisian hire, because, and look, Delconte's going to get credit for that, but that felt like a Kevin Eltife hire more than anything else. That in that situation, but even then, Delconte gets it done. Ultimately, he's the athletic director, and if Sarkisian weren't to work, it would be on his resume as well. So he gets credit for it, even if I think in that one situation he had more help closing that deal than he would have in these other deals. It's incredibly impressive. If Delconte were on the show right now, I would just give him his flowers. He is, I think, the greatest athletic director. And oh, by the way, he steered the entire athletic department into the SEC. Oh, by the way, that too. So today, Chris Delconte on this Overreaction Monday show, which is technically an Overreaction Tuesday show. There's no Onward today. He's traveling. It's just little old me holding down the fort, doing a show on Tuesday that should have been done on Monday because of the technical difficulties that occurred. It's right now. It feels like hyperbole. I can feel some of you sitting back thinking, whoa. Easy there, Catch. Really? Best ever? The GOAT? Man, the hit rate is obscenely out of control. I don't know what the mean is, but to be 9 for 9 on all of your hires outside of the men's basketball things, just incredible. When the 9 for 9 is national championships, Final Fours, elite of the elite nationally, that's the bar. Again, it feels like every program I mentioned, other than football, which has been competing for it, other than baseball, which was ranked number 1 in the country, other than women's basketball, which went to the right. There are 4 notable, the big dogs. Softball is the biggest one that Texas has won thus far. If you're thinking about the big sports, it's football, it's men's basketball, it's probably baseball. No offense to women's basketball, which then comes in 4th. And I think softball probably is 5th. And then I think volleyball is probably 6th. If we're talking about the programs that move the needles, that no offense to swimming, no offense to golf, no offense to tennis. I think that's the hierarchy of the sports. And so there are still championships to be won, right? Of the big 5, the big 4, Texas hasn't won a national championship yet. They haven't done it in football. I don't even know that they're close in men's basketball. They seem close, though, in baseball and women's basketball. So in 3 of the big 4, they're suddenly knocking, knock on the door. Everything else is just winning stuff left and right. And Delconte gets an immense amount of credit for having all of this going on at the exact same time while moving the program to the SEC. To win the Directors' Cup in year 1 of the SEC is some serious, how do you like them apple stuff. I didn't think they could do it. In fact, I made the case that maybe Texas had won its last Directors' Cup a year ago in the last year of the Big 12 because there was no way that in year 1 of the big bad SEC that Texas could pull it off. And yet here we are. Here we are, needing Texas essentially to not show up for the track championships this weekend and needing USC to pull off a natty double on the men's and the women's side. Now, look, USC, it's not impossible that USC could do that. There's a reason why we're having this conversation about Texas only being 90% of a favorite to win the Directors' Cup instead of 100%. So USC can do it. But we expect Texas, 90% chance. Now, 9 out of 10 times this gets done this weekend. And even if they don't win the Directors' Cup this year, they finish second by a few points. It doesn't change the fact that Texas is in a place right now. Don't take this for granted, guys. Don't take preseason number one in football in all likelihood this year. Preseason, top 3, top 4 in women's basketball. I think Texas will be a preseason top 5 team. Don't take this for granted. Soak it, marinate in it, soak it up. Soak it up, man. Marinate in it. Just take a bath in the success. There will be a day when this comes to an end. That Chris Delconte, the greatest athletic director that Texas has ever known, one day he'll be gone. One day it will slump again. It's the way of the world. All great empires die. And the thing that you would say about this Texas thing right now is it doesn't feel like, I see some, we've seen declines all in all walks of life. It doesn't feel like that's happening with Texas athletics right now. It feels like we're having this conversation about Delconte's greatness and the place that Texas is in, but it still feels like Texas is ascending. It still feels like all of the big dog programs other than softball are still doing their thing, still climbing their own Everest. There are more titles to win. But, guys, it's Chris Delconte's world, and we're all just living in it. He's got his little orange suits. He's hanging out with McConaughey. He's got everybody on speed dial. Tip of the cap. It's his world. We're just living in it. Well, everyone but those that live in College Station or Norman or the SEC, they're not real happy about all this. Not even a little. Every day it feels like the people in Norman and College Station have to do some ridiculous things to, they're just constantly puffing out their they don't have resumes to read off. You have to talk. You have to do photo shoots where you do the horns down. It's got to constantly be about the other guy when it can't be about you. And I think the biggest thing that Delconte has done is it just feels like OU and A&M are afterthoughts. They don't define success for any of these programs. And we know, even in softball, as recent as a week ago, OU kind of determined the Texas softball season's fate. They were the big dogs. They couldn't climb that mountain until they did. It doesn't feel like OU and A&M are really the biggest obstacle for football. It doesn't feel like they're the obstacle in women's basketball or baseball. I mean, Delconte's athletic department has turned those two entities into once-a-year hurdles instead of 365 days a year sagas. And it's up for them to change the dynamics. Texas has left OU and A&M in the dust. And in their respectives, in every single sport on the 40 acres, the bar is defined by what's at the top nationally and not what's at the top regionally. It's South Carolina in women's basketball. It's Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama in football. It's pick any of the SEC teams in baseball, right? They trade national championships on an annual basis, but that's the bar. It's climbing that conference totem pole. And look, Arkansas is there right now, but it's been they're trying to win a national championship, but it's been a long time coming there. It takes time in that sport, but sport by sport, the bar's not Oklahoma or A&M. The bar's whoever is ranked number one in the country right now in that sport. That's who Texas is coming for. That is the state of play right now. And OU and A&M are going to have to learn to live with it. Because, again, I don't think things are changing anytime soon. So, later today, happy hour. Later today, you're off work. Later today, maybe you're at work. Maybe it's not a glass of wine. Maybe it's a cartridge from Rogue Shop, or maybe it is a gummy from Rogue Shop. Whatever your vice is, whatever your little kick is, enjoy it today. Again, marinate in this. I've been covering Texas athletics for 3 decades. God, it makes me feel old. But the one thing about being able to say you've covered Texas athletics for 3 decades is it gives you some perspective. I was doing this before the internet, which seems like a long time ago. Some of you will watch this video and have never lived life without the internet. I've been covering Texas athletics since before the internet. 1994, my first year. Worked in the Texas SID office when I was in high school. I was telling somebody my story the other day, and they were like, God damn, man, what were you doing at 18? I was getting after it. I was. But since 94, I've watched this thing. I've told this story before. In my first year at Texas as a student, technically, I was working in the SID office in the fall of 94, but I didn't start my first semester at Texas until the spring of 95. That was my first semester. I did like 95 through, I think, the spring of 99. I finished with like 100 credits, didn't get a degree. But I was working in the SID office in 94. 94 is the year that Texas lost to Rice. I was there for that. I was working in the athletic department. In fact, the thing about that Rice game is that Sunday, the game was played on a Sunday night. I had gone to the Cowboys game. I think they played the Eagles. I went with my friend, the bread man. Shout out to Eric, wherever he is today. Hopefully somebody will say, hey, Catch gave the bread man a shout out. We listened to the game on the radio on the way home. And I think I told this story on a show lately. But 31 years later, I think this is a story that paints the picture properly. That first semester, second semester technically, but that first year I'm working in the Texas Athletic Department in the SID office, second floor at Belmont. They lose to Rice, and I'll never forget the Monday after the game. It's kind of crazy. It's a hell of a thing to work in the sports information department after just a humiliating loss. And Rice was a humiliating loss. And, you were back then, you were starting to get the planes that would fly over the stadium that would say, dump DeLoss and flush the John. You guys remember those airplanes? Maybe not. Those things used to fly over the stadium. That day I'm working in the SID office and somebody comes running in, panicked. Jeff, did you just send a fax? Nope, not me. Somebody had sent a fax. Somebody had sent a fax from the sports information office to the athletic director's office, which was at the time was exactly like across the hall. It was the second floor of Belmont. Like they were like neighboring offices. There had been a fax sent across the hallway. They knew it was from the SID office because the fax came from the SID office. What was the fax? Somebody in the office had written a letter demanding that DeLoss Dodds be fired. And they faxed it from the sports information office department. Swear to God, it was a real thing that happened. And I'm not saying I was the first person they asked, did you do it, Jeff? But I got asked, did you do it? I think it might have been old Texas baseball SID Amy Stabley that asked me about it. I can't remember. Like there was an inquisition. And eventually they figured out who did it. It was another guy who was a student assistant at the time. He might have even been an intern. I was a paid employee by then, for the record. Not making much, but I was a paid employee. And he got fired. But that is the shenanigans that when I first started covering Texas athletics was going on. It was so bad. It was so toxic. The elite of the elite programs were so bad because that was I guess you were in the middle of the Penders era there. You're at the end of Gus. Football was kind of a mess back in 94. An athletic director getting a demand of a fire, it wasn't a cease and desist, but it was like a notice of like You need to be fired from his own buildings. And all these years later, now I'm covering an athletic director who, man, I won't say it feels like he can do no wrong. I don't even think Chris would want those set of expectations. But it's close. It's close. And I just want to say it again. Don't take it for granted. These are the best of times. These are, for someone who runs a website like orangebloods.com and does shows on Orange Bloods Live, this is what you dream of. Don't take it for granted. Thank Chris Delconte. Send him an email. Fax him a letter and say, attaboy. I was watching Orange Bloods Live. He laid it all out. Pretty incredible stuff. He told me not to take it for granted. I'm sending you a note of thanks because you helped make this happen. You hired Mike White. You hired Vic Schaefer. You hired Jim Schlossnagle. You hired Steve Sarkisian. It goes on and on, right? You hired Mike White. You hired Bob Bowman. And now in basketball, you've hired Sean Miller. That's a lot of happiness right there. All those names in the last few years have generated a lot of good times, a lot of smiles, a lot of favorite memories, core memories. If you're thinking about Inside Out, there will be young people, young women will have watched that Texas softball team this weekend. They'll have watched that game on Friday night and they'll say, I want to go to Texas. That looks awesome. Anyways, I'll wrap up today's Overreaction Monday show. I don't even think it's an overreaction. Is Chris Delconte the greatest athletic director in the history of the program, or is it DeLoss Dodds? I'm leaning Delconte. I know it may be recency bias. Leave your reply. Leave your answer to that question in the comments. And before you do anything else, before you do that, make sure you go check out rogueshop.com. Go to the website. Use that promo code OrangeBloods for your discount. And get a product today while you can. It'll make your life a little bit better. In fact, when I'm done recording this, I'm going to engage in a little Rogue Shop product, make my day a little bit better. For myself and for Anwar Richardson, who's not here right now, but he's here in spirit. For Rogue Shop, for everybody at Orange Bloods Live, you guys have a fantastic day. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Later.